The red wave turned out to be a red trickle, and now some Republicans are blaming midterm election losses on voting fraud. Welcome to America Uncovered. I'm Chris Chappell. This episode is sponsored by Incogni. You probably know the companies are collecting your personal data, but you may not realize just how many. Dozens, maybe hundreds, most of which you've never heard of. And you have no idea what they're doing with your data. Incogni helps you stop them. I'll explain more at the end. So, it's been more than a week since the 2022 U.S. midterm elections, and the results are still not entirely in. As of this recording, Democrats have barely managed to hold on to the Senate. They're still counting votes for the House of Representatives, but it looks like Republicans are going to gain control. They're only one person away from a majority. Still, many Republicans are disappointed with how they performed. I mean, there was supposed to be a red tsunami. President Biden's approval ratings are abysmal. The economy under the Democrats is a mess. How could Republicans not win by a landslide pretty much everywhere? Well, there are a lot of possible reasons for Republicans' lower than expected performance, such as a bigger than expected turnout of young voters, voter pushback on abortion restrictions, and independents leaning towards Democrats. And of course, cheating! Because whenever one party's candidates lose, there's always someone who acts like they're playing poker in the Wild West. Some in conservative circles are specifically blaming election fraud. For example, people on Twitter shared a Fox News video of a Wisconsin poll worker initialing ballots before they're given to voters. This is normal procedure on Election Day, but some, including Trump National Security Advisor Michael Flynn, accused the election worker of doctoring ballots. There have also been accusations of voting machines connecting to Wi-Fi networks. Now, voting machines aren't supposed to be able to directly connect to the internet. But back in January 2020, a group of cybersecurity experts found that dozens of U.S. voting systems did connect to the internet in some way, which makes them vulnerable to hacking. So these voting systems can get online even when they're not supposed to be. But I can't get my phone online even though it's supposed to. Thanks, T-Mobile. Republican candidates have actively stirred doubts about election integrity as well. In Michigan, Republican candidate for Secretary of State Kristina Karamo claimed there was lawlessness in Ann Arbor. She claims that people were still being allowed to vote even if they joined the voting line after the 8 p.m. cutoff. Michigan state law allows any person in line when polls close to still vote. But Karamo claims no one was tracking whether people joined the line afterwards. Meanwhile, Republican candidate for Arizona Governor Kari Lake blamed election workers for intentionally slow-rolling the results. As of this recording, Lake has refused to concede the election to her opponent. Even former President Donald Trump chimed in, suggesting that voting machines weren't working in predominantly conservative areas, even though liberal areas were affected as well. Did I say even Trump chimed in? I meant to say, of course, Trump chimed in. To be fair, the election didn't always go smoothly. Arizona ballot tabulation machines glitched. Some ballots weren't lining up properly inside the machines and weren't being read. Meanwhile, instructions were given for people to vote at other locations. Much of the problem was later fixed by changing the printer settings. You know, I feel for the Arizona poll workers. Figuring out how to change the printer settings is the worst. But it wasn't just Arizona. The Federalist, a conservative news website, pointed out several other incidents, like how cameras at a vote counting facility stopped broadcasting overnight. All voting machines in a New Jersey county went down, and polling stations in Pennsylvania and Texas ran out of paper. They ran out of paper? Really? Either there's a massive conspiracy, or poll workers with little training earning barely above minimum wage might not be that good at their job. Both of those things are pretty bad, actually. Those weren't the only Election Day hiccups. Computer hacks from months ago reportedly affected vote tabulation in New York. And Virginia had a host of problems, too. All of these issues had people asking a lot of questions. How could a technologically advanced country like the US face this many problems? Is what I'd be asking if I didn't have a T-Mobile phone. I know all too well about the technological problems the US faces. Some Republicans believe that these incidents were intentional. The Federalist claims that problems cropped up in voting centers on Election Day when and where Republicans vote disproportionately. But whether or not there's actual evidence pointing to election fraud disproportionately affecting Republicans is besides the point. More and more Republicans are inclined to believe it anyways. They think the system's rigged against them, especially if they lose, and that creates a bigger problem. More on that after the break. Welcome back. Trust in the American voting system is tanking among Republicans. Polls show this consistently. According to a Politico Morning Consult poll, 53% of Republicans don't trust the election system. Only 14% of Democrats said they distrust the system. USA Today reports that 62% of Republicans said they were worried the midterm results could be manipulated. And according to a poll from LX News and YouGov, a majority of Republicans expected some or a lot of voter fraud. Now, whether you believe voter fraud is something the U.S. needs to worry about depends on how you interpret the data and your definition of the word fraud. According to the conservative think tank, the Heritage Foundation, there have been over 1,300 instances of voter fraud in the past 25 years. And I assume at least some of that must have occurred in the vote on Lay's new potato chip flavor. There's no other explanation for why Crispy Taco beat everything bagel. Given the mistakes do happen and that this is out of millions of votes, 1,300 over 25 years isn't a lot. However, it is important to say that this doesn't mean there haven't been more cases of voting fraud. It's kind of like proving a negative. If the voting fraud is actually successful, then you wouldn't know about it. And conceivably, you wouldn't need massive, widespread voter fraud to affect an election. You just need to target a few important swing counties. The Heritage Foundation and other conservatives frame this as proof that fair and free elections are in jeopardy. According to them, the mounting collection of cases continues to disprove the narrative that voter fraud is not real and that further election integrity measures are not needed. Many Republicans specifically blame mail-in voting for election fraud, which they see as less secure. Election experts argue that mail-in voting fraud is very rare, given that there are already a lot of safeguards. But Republicans aren't convinced. They see mail-in voting as a much more pervasive problem. According to some Republicans, mail-in voting is a means for Democrats to harvest ballots. Ballot harvesting is when people are allowed to collect mail-in or absentee ballots from other voters' homes and drop them off in larger batches at a polling place or election office. And there have been cases of fraud linked to ballot harvesting before, like in 2018 in a North Carolina congressional race. Ironically, it was a Republican accused of ballot harvesting and tampering with ballots in that case. Ballot harvesting is illegal in North Carolina, and the election was invalidated and a new election called. But the potential issues with ballot harvesting is why some outright equate mail-in ballots with voter fraud. But voting by mail itself isn't fraud. It's lazy. And being lazy is the most American thing you can do besides voting. Here's the biggest issue with how Democrats and Republicans view elections. Polls show that many Democrats are more concerned with voter suppression, the idea that people who are eligible to vote are being denied the ability to vote, while many Republicans are more concerned about voting security, the idea that there are loopholes in the system that allow election fraud. But polls also show that almost half of Republicans and Democrats, as well as independents, are concerned about both voter suppression and voting security equally. Look, there's no perfect voting system. There are trade-offs no matter what. What Americans should do is have an honest conversation about how to balance voting access with voting security. Or both parties could twist things to make the other side sound as bad as possible by accusing each other of being election riggers or election deniers. Yeah, that sounds good. More after the break. Welcome back. Some Republicans are arguing that Democrats could only have won in the midterms by stealing votes with ballot harvesting and other underhanded means. Some say it's because of mail-in voting that Democrats won the 2022 midterm elections. Not Republican messaging, low-quality candidates, Trump, or because they're anti-abortion. The message that these Republicans are sharing with each other is that there's a political machine that's controlling the mechanics of midterm elections. As the Federalists put it, the political machine is what matters most in American federal politics in 2022, and Democrats perfected theirs in 2020. Look, the perfected Democratic machine isn't mail-in voting, it's Al Gore. It's almost 2023, and people still don't believe he's a robot. The Last Refuge, a right-wing blog, alleges that Democrats are less focused on winning votes and more focused on gathering ballots. Otherwise, they would be at a disadvantage. The blog specifically cites the midterm elections of Michigan and Pennsylvania as proof of this, because they ran unpopular Democrats who still won over the Republicans. Okay, but the Republicans did run Dr. Oz in Pennsylvania, which kind of seems like an own goal. Now, just to be clear to our YouTube overlords, we're not saying that these Republicans are right. We're simply explaining their thought process. Some Republicans are concluding that until the GOP invests in similar infrastructure as Democrats, it will keep losing elections no matter what kinds of candidates it runs. Essentially, they're saying we got to start cheating to counter their cheating. Kind of like how all bodybuilders are roided up to the gills. Yes, they took so many steroids, they grew gills. After all, this is how gerrymandering became big. Both sides are doing it now. Now, I don't want to say that this growing distrust in elections is completely the fault of Republicans hyping up their losses. Like everything in this country, it's more complicated than that. And a lot of it has to do with the hyper-political polarization in America, which means liberals are also to blame. Remember when anti-vaxxers were crunchy granola moms who took their kids to chickenpox parties? Now vaccines have become politicized. And if you do something like worry about side effects, you're branded an anti-vaxxer. And probably a right-wing extremist, too. A similar thing happened with election fraud concerns after the 2020 elections. Even asking questions meant that you were an election denier. And probably a right-wing extremist, too. So when many Republicans feel like the government, the media, the system is pushing them away, it's not a shock that they distrust the system. Some Republicans claim that they'll have a chance at winning if they tighten election laws, like Florida, which saw a huge red sweep favoring Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. While it's true that Florida enacted stricter election laws, those election laws alone weren't what helped DeSantis and other Republicans get elected. DeSantis beat his opponent by almost 20 points. DeSantis made gains with Latinos, women, and even slightly with black voters, which allowed him to flip counties that traditionally favored Democrats, such as Palm Beach, Osceola, and of course, Miami-Dade. So you're saying gaining voter approval might actually get more votes? No, we don't have time for logical explanations like that. The number of registered Republicans in Florida also increased. Many people attribute this to efficient campaigns to get people registered, people moving in to avoid harsh COVID policies elsewhere, and Democrats abandoning Florida. So election laws alone aren't going to make Republicans win. Here's the problem with Republicans blaming election losses on voter fraud. The more they do this, the more disillusioned they'll get. They'll start believing that it's pointless to vote if the votes are just going to go to Democrats anyways. They'll just see every loss as a steal. This is bad for Republicans. It sets up a self-defeating cycle where fewer and fewer Republicans will vote because they think the system is rigged, which means they'll keep losing elections and then they'll believe even more that the system is rigged. And it doesn't go anywhere good. This is also bad for democracy. If the U.S. continues down this path, it'll experience even more instability that further divides the country. So, are we going to have that honest conversation about balancing voting access with voting security? Or is it election riggers versus election deniers, the death match? I hope it's the first option, because voting is one of the pillars of America. That and being lazy. And this episode has been sponsored by Incogni. Whenever you do anything online, there's a huge number of companies that collect your personal data. Your name, your email, your home address, your social security number, which campaigns you donated to, you name it. What are they doing with your data? They're buying it, selling it, and trading it. For example, If you've gotten dozens of emails or text messages asking you to support random Democrats in states you don't live in, it could be because you donated to Bernie Sanders' campaign one time 6 years ago. All that information has been sold or passed around, and now you're on their lists forever now. At least until you get it cleaned up. This kind of thing is why I signed up for Incogni. When I signed up in February this year, I discovered there were 76 data brokers that potentially had my private information. Since then, that number has grown to 134. Fortunately, Incogni has been working hard to force these companies to delete my data. 8 months after signing up, Incogni had already gotten my details removed from 58 of these data brokers, with 76 more in progress. And I still haven't had to do anything after signing up. So get your data taken offline using Incogni. Click the link below or go to incogni.com/uncovered. The first 100 people to use the code UNCOVERED will get 20% off. Get your personal data off the market with Incogni. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. Thanks for watching America Uncovered.